Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that takes a massive stack of sources, articles, research, your notes, and really just pulls out the most important nuggets of insight.
Mm.
And today we are immersing ourselves in a truly profound, detailed narrative. We're going to analyze how a lifetime of relentless emotional messaging, particularly from family, can completely define or, and this is the key, entirely mystify a person's internal reality.
This is such a great case study. This deep dive gives us an almost unparalleled view into the long-term damage of emotional abuse within a family that is just obsessed with superficial perfection.
Right.
We're using the narrative of Victoria Dawson's life, and we trace it all the way from her very challenging birth through her young adulthood as this powerful, almost novel-like look at narcissistic family dynamics and that desperate quest for validation.
Our mission today is heavy, but it's so essential. We need to analyze the specific, really insidious roots of Victoria's deep-seated self-esteem issues,
Yep.
all of it stemming from years of parental comparisons and just emotional neglect. Then we're going to track her incredibly difficult journey towards self-acceptance, vocational fulfillment, and, ultimately liberation.
And we want to give you, the listener, some actionable insights here. How to recognize those toxic patterns, and most importantly, how to break free from that constant hunger for external approval.
And that hunger, that core wound, it's just captured perfectly in the central conflict of her story. It's all in that painful nickname Victoria carried throughout her childhood.
Tester cake.
The tester cake, what a devastating term.
It sounds almost gentle, but it functioned as a psychological weapon.
Absolutely. That phrase immediately tells you that you are viewed as the rough draft, the proof of concept, the one that needed fixing or was just simply less desirable than the finished product. So this entire deep dive is about the sheer psychological weight of being constantly measured against an impossible image-driven standard set by these seemingly flawless, beautiful parents.
It's a profound narrative because it illustrates something universal about conditional love. The moment a child gets a label like tester cake, whether it's about their looks or grades or sports,
Right.
that label doesn't just stick, it becomes the script. Victoria's entire adult life was spent performing the role of the mistake, just trying desperately to prove she was worthy of being the ultimate achievement.
So let's unpack this. Let's start at the very beginning with the dazzling, completely controlled foundation of her family. Okay, so to really get Victoria, you have to understand the world she was born into. Jim and Christine Dawson. They weren't just a couple. They were like a self-constructed monument to the American dream.
Totally. The source describes them as a dazzling pair with flawless, all-American good looks. They got married right after college on Christmas. Their whole existence was just built on keeping up this perfect external facade.
It was an ecosystem of these really rigid, image-based roles.
Absolutely. Jim was the center of it all, the adored. He's described as this exceptional athlete, a successful ad agency guy. And he dictated the rules. And those rules were absolute.
What were they?
Adoration. He required adoration. And critically, no criticism was ever tolerated.
Wow. And his wife, Christine, she was the adorer. She was perfectly cast in that supporting role.
Yeah, she was only comfortable when she was making sure Jim looked like a capable, successful provider. Their relationship wasn't really based on a deep emotional connection. It was all about mutual image maintenance.
They were just constantly seeking validation from the outside world that they were, in fact, the perfect couple.
And this need for control, which is, a hallmark of narcissistic personalities, it becomes the lens through which Jim views his own children.
Which is exactly why Victoria's birth, even though it came after years of trying, became the first major crack in their perfect image. Her arrival wasn't a joy. It was framed as something Jim could not control.
Wait, so even after years of trying to get pregnant, this gift of a healthy child is immediately seen as a failure, just because it didn't fit his image?
Exactly. How does that specific dynamic impact a child's ability to, bond securely?
Well, it creates an immediate fundamental insecurity. The source tells us that Victoria's gender was a major blow to his ego and image. He wanted a son,
Of course he did.
an extension of his own athletic success and control. So when the child fails to instantly validate the parent's ego, the child gets this nonverbal message: you are not what I ordered.
And that disappointment becomes the child's inherited shame.
Precisely. And then you have her appearance, which only made the problem worse.
Right. She was fair, blonde, and blue-eyed, a complete contrast to her dark-haired, dark-eyed, all-American parents. She looked, as the source puts it, very English.
And because she didn't look like them, Jim latched onto this naming joke.
Oh, the Queen Victoria joke.
Yes. She was named after Queen Victoria, an ongoing paternal joke that made Jim laugh heartily. But it wasn't an affectionate nickname. It was a running commentary on her looks being out of place. It was like he was implying she was some kind of ancient, unwelcome throwback.
It's dehumanizing. He's turning his own daughter into a caricature.
And that moment when she's 5, the moment where the joke finally lands for her is it's absolutely defining.
She sees a picture of the very old Queen Victoria, and the source captures this devastating internalization so well. Her sense of how her father viewed her like a queen was never the same again. She put the pieces together in an instant.
I mean, think about that. The cognitive and emotional processing for a 5-year-old. She realizes her dad's laughter isn't based on love, it's mockery of her physical form.
It's the first clear signal she gets that the reason she feels wrong is because she looks wrong, according to the one person whose love she needs most. And that trauma, it just resurfaces later every single time she feels physically inadequate.
And if Victoria was the painful anomaly, then the arrival of Grace 2 years later was the ultimate correction.
The ultimate achievement.
That's right. Grace's birth was planned via a C-section, which just reinforces Jim's need for absolute control. And he was enormously relieved because Grace was, quote, absolutely exquisite, looking like a porcelain doll.
She was his image confirmed, dark hair, brown eyes, delicate frame. She looked like them.
And here's the crucial detail, the absence of the joke. There was no mention made of his paternal grandmother this time. He didn't need to demean Grace because she was one who looked like a baby in a picture book or an ad.
The contrast is so stark, and it just sets the psychological stage for the rest of their lives. Victoria appeared to have been dropped on their doorstep by someone else.
And the family unit, Jim, Christine, and Grace, they were a reflection of each other.
So Victoria, with her broader shoulders, her bigger frame, her fair coloring, she was perpetually out of sync. And this is how that tester cake script became this deeply entrenched, validated reality in their home.
And it's so important to remember that image-obsessed families don't just prefer one child. They construct a narrative around one child being the right one, which means the other child has to be the wrong one.
Right, it's a zero-sum game.
Exactly. Victoria didn't just feel different. The entire family structure depended on her being the flawed prototype, so Grace could shine as the perfect product.
So as the girls grew up, Victoria didn't just accept her role as the tester cake. She found a way to earn conditional worth by becoming the selfless caretaker.
Which is a classic heartbreaking survival mechanism in families where emotional needs just aren't being met.
It's textbook, right?
Completely. The sources say that by the time Grace was 3 months old, Victoria was inseparable from her and was already fully capable of providing care diapers, bathing, feeding.
How does that even happen?
Because Christine, the mother, happily gave up the role. This gave Christine a much-needed break for bridge, golf, and her trainer 4 times a week. Victoria basically became the substitute for the mother who had emotionally checked out.
And Victoria just embraced it. She felt this profound, immediate bond, and she makes this silent vow to protect Grace and never let anyone hurt her. She loved Grace unconditionally.
Which was the exact opposite of the conditional, transactional admiration she got from her parents.
So caretaking became Victoria's only functional source of validation in that home. It's like she's thinking, if I can't be the perfect daughter, I can be the perfect sister.
But this bond, it just constantly reinforced the tester cake narrative. She was convinced she was the mistake, and Grace was the ultimate achievement. And because the physical differences were so obvious...
The outsiders would comment on it.
Yes. People would openly ask the Dawsons if Victoria was adopted.
Oh, that's brutal. I found the description of her physical difference particularly poignant. It says she had a square look to her, a bigger frame, and broad shoulders. She was the galoshes in a set of fruit.
That feeling of being physically out of place is so visceral.
And that constant external validation of her difference, amplified by Jim's jokes, it led directly to her coping mechanism, food.
The source notes, her healthy appetite triggered Jim's cruel warnings. You're going to regret that appetite one day, young lady. This is classic control language. He wasn't worried about her health. He was worried about her reflecting negatively on the family's image.
And here's where the parental dynamic becomes truly insidious. Christine subtly enabled the very behavior that Jim criticized.
Yes. Christine, who lived on broiled fish, steamed vegetables, and salads, always kept a hefty supply of ice cream in the freezer, and she served all the fattening things Victoria liked to eat.
Why would she do that?
It's passive-aggressive sabotage. It's designed to maintain the hierarchy. Christine makes sure Victoria has access to comfort food, the very thing Jim targets, which ensures Victoria's weight struggles continue.
Which in turn validates Jim's original tester cake narrative.
Exactly. It keeps Victoria safely in the position of the flawed one, so she poses no threat to Christine or Grace's position as the flawless reflection of Jim's perfection. It's a textbook emotional double-bind. Victoria is criticized for the symptom, her weight, while the cause, the emotional neglect, is just perpetuated.
The toxicity of this whole conditional relationship just explodes in that drowning incident in Montecito. Victoria was 14. This event just perfectly encapsulates the family's misplaced priorities.
It's such a crucial moment. So Victoria, she briefly leaves Grace, then realizes her sister has been pulled out by a wave or a current. She races back, dives in, grabs Grace, and pulls her out.
It's a heroic act. Profound bravery, sisterly love, self-sacrifice. It's everything she vowed to do.
Right. And yet when Jim arrives and pulls both girls to safety, his immediate reaction is purely punitive. He completely overlooks the rescue. He immediately starts shouting at Victoria, shaking with fear and fury.
And he's focused only on her perceived failure. How could you leave her alone like that? The rescue, the selflessness, the risk she took, it's all just dismissed.
And Christine's silent response is just as damning. She comforts Grace and then hands Victoria a towel. That's it.
Wow.
No praise, no acknowledgement of the trauma, just a clear, wordless message, especially given Victoria's wet, developing body, that she should cover up her womanly body.
So the message Victoria received was crystal clear. Your bravery is secondary, your body is a problem to be concealed, and your worth is completely negotiable.
So after being, psychologically exiled from her own family's circle of perfection, Victoria seeks refuge in the one area where she can actually control the outcome, where she can measure her success objectively.
Academics and outside interests.
This pivot is essential for her psychological survival. Because her social life was so severely curtailed, her mother very seldom let her have friends over, always finding fault with anyone Victoria brought home.
So she internalized that energy.
She did. She channeled it into highly structured intellectual pursuits, Latin, English Lit, the travel club, and she excelled. She became one of the top 3 students in her class.
Academics offered her a substitute for emotional safety. It was a space where her effort equaled success, unlike at home, where effort was met with criticism or just indifference. It was a measurable, controllable niche for her.
But the pressure of being the smart one only intensified her body image issues when she got to high school.
Right. She hit 5'7" early and had the body of a woman by 7th grade. She felt like a moose compared to the thin, racy girls.
Which led her to adopt protective clothing. Baggy clothes, lumberjack shirts, anything to hide the growing figure that she knew her family and society judged as wrong.
It's that classic strategy of hiding in plain sight. If I don't draw attention to my body, I can't be judged for it.
But during high school, she finally finds some genuine, non-judgmental external validation in her friendship with Connie, the 6'2" basketball junior.
Connie is such a crucial lifeline for her.
She really is, because she sees Victoria not through the Dawson family's lens of image and perfection, but through the lens of genuine humanity. Connie validates her by calling her smart and fun. She doesn't judge her size or her style.
And that supportive connection shows Victoria that her true self, her personality, her intelligence, her humor, is inherently valued by others, regardless of her tester cake status at home.
And all of this internal pressure, it just culminates at graduation. Victoria is recognized for her academic excellence, and she gives this eloquent speech that is really a profound articulation of her entire life experience.
She talks about feeling out of step, being a weirdo, and she argues that being different is okay to succeed in the world. She spoke with so much vulnerability that the source says tears were rolling down her classmates and their parents' cheeks. It was a total triumph of self-acceptance.
It should have been a transformative moment for her relationship with her parents, a moment where Jim could finally acknowledge her pain and her strength.
But he doesn't.
Instead, he lands the final devastating parental blow. His response, "Great speech. It'll make all the weirdos in your class feel good."
He proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that he completely missed her point. He couldn't recognize his own daughter's profound struggle, the one he largely created.
He hears weirdo and just assumes she's talking about other people, not realizing he's the reason she felt like one.
And she even confronts him about it, quietly. She says, "I'm one of them, the weirdos and the freaks." But Jim's reply just shows his core narcissistic blindness. He simply cannot validate an experience that doesn't center around him.
And this validation failure is so critical because it sends Victoria into the college dating scene, still carrying this message that she is fundamentally unworthy of love.
So at Northwestern, she dates Beau, a pre-law junior. Their relationship is intense and physically intimate, but it remains unconsummated.
Which just ramps up all of Victoria's existing fears about her own inadequacy.
She starts desperately losing weight to look great for him, pouring all her self-worth into getting the validation she craves. She's convinced that if she's just thin enough, if she's perfect enough, Beau will finally commit.
But then Beau breaks it off. And while his reason is simple, he's gay, the way he delivers the news just confirms Victoria's greatest, most deeply held fear.
He refers to her luscious body and big breasts as a wild, delicious fantasy. And then he says, she is what I think I should want, but in reality I don't. I want a man. That is exquisitely packaged rejection, but it's still rejection. What she heard was, you are the ideal woman, but you are not suitable for real life.
It validates the tester cake script all over again. You're desirable as a concept, but you're fundamentally unsuitable for true connection or commitment.
And that betrayal of expectation, even if it was accidental on Beau's part, it just reinforces that toxic message that despite any desirable physical traits she might have, she is intrinsically unwanted. The emotional injury is just profound.
Okay, so after that devastating rejection from Beau, Victoria makes two really major decisions that signal a shift toward self-determination.
Right. She chooses a specific place, New York, and a specific vocation teaching.
Moving away geographically is so often the first step in breaking free from a toxic family orbit.
And she pursues her dream of teaching English literature at the Madison School, this exclusive private school. But this choice, it just instantly throws her into conflict with the Dawson family's core values. It kicks off the vocation versus validation war.
The Dawsons immediately reacted with profound disappointment. They dismissed teaching as not a real job. They focused exclusively on the low salary, the lack of prestige.
They pushed her toward high-status, high-earning fields like advertising or PR.
Of course. Why?
Yeah.
Because teaching literature and nurturing young minds doesn't reflect well on their image. Jim and Christine measure success purely by financial and social metrics that they can brag about at the country club.
And the financial comparison is immediate and brutal. Her mother proudly contrasts Victoria's meager teaching salary with Grace's modeling career.
Yeah, she says, your sister just made $50,000 for a 2-day shoot for a national campaign.
Let's just pause and analyze the weight of that comparison for a second.
Please.
Grace earned Victoria's entire annual salary in 48 hours of superficial work. And that just hammers home this insidious idea that Victoria's vocational fulfillment, her passion, her hard work, her true calling, is financially and therefore socially inferior to Grace's success, which is based entirely on genetics and image.
She's constantly being told her deepest values are low status.
But New York offered her something her family never did, a supportive, chosen community.
Right. She finds a rent-controlled apartment in the East 80s with 3 roommates, including Harlan, who works at the Metropolitan Museum's Costume Institute.
And Harlan is more than just a roommate. He becomes her crucial, supportive confidant.
Exactly. And it's because he understands toxic family dynamics. As a gay man working in the arts, he's likely navigated his own history of parental disappointment and conditional acceptance about his career, his lifestyle. He provides a mirror and an objective voice that she desperately needs.
This stability allows Victoria to really thrive professionally. Her students adore her, and she finds admiration from a colleague, Jack Bailey, the chemistry teacher. He tells her, "You're a star here."
And that validation coming from a handsome colleague, it provides this powerful emotional boost. She starts diligently watching her diet. She loses 10 pounds. It seems like external validation through affection is finally working.
But unfortunately, this reliance on external validation is precisely what makes her so vulnerable to the Jack Bailey deception.
Jack provided the specific emotional supply she was craving, but the relationship was fundamentally dishonest. The hard truth comes from Harlan's boyfriend, John, who reveals that Jack is splitting his weekends and Thanksgiving plans between Victoria and another teacher.
This betrayal, this realization that she was just a compartment, it hits Victoria like a physical blow.
And the confrontation that follows is just textbook narcissistic behavior. The gaslighting, the minimizing.
Jack is caught, and he's furious. He immediately shifts to defense, rationalizing his behavior with these cruel technicalities.
He says, "You never asked me, I never lied to you, and I never told you we were exclusive." He uses loopholes to justify his lack of integrity.
But the ultimate defense is the one that directly attacks her core wound. He says, I haven't slept with you, Victoria. I don't owe you anything.
That line, I don't owe you anything, that re-traumatizes her. It's an echo of the conditional love she received her entire life. It reinforces that decades-old toxic message from her parents that she's fundamentally not worthy of being loved or being chosen exclusively.
She feels ugly and unloved and betrayed. The dream of being enough for someone just falls apart entirely. And it proves that even when she tries to create her own narrative, the external world just seems determined to hold the mirror up to her internal tester cake script. So after the Jack Bailey incident, Victoria recognizes that she's trapped. She's in a destructive pattern fueled by her own belief that she's unworthy. And this recognition is the real turning point.
It is. She seeks professional help, which marks that necessary pivot from searching for external validation to doing deep internal work.
She starts therapy with Dr. Watson, and she focuses on dismantling 23 years of emotional abuse. That ingrained idea that she is unlovable because her parents didn't approve of her.
And this is complex work. You don't just erase decades of messaging overnight. You have to recognize the messages, you have to challenge them, and then you have to write new ones.
Dr. Watson introduces this necessary, psychologically provocative question. It's designed to challenge Victoria's subconscious connection between her weight and her self-worth.
What did she ask?
She asks, do you think it's possible that you keep the weight on so you don't have to compete with your beautiful younger sister?
Wow, that is a brilliant intervention. It forces Victoria to confront the possibility that her body size isn't just a symptom of comfort eating, but an active subconscious defense mechanism. If she keeps the weight on, she doesn't have to enter the beauty competition she believes she cannot win. She gets to preemptively opt out, protecting herself from the inevitable rejection that she's convinced will happen if she tries to meet her parents' image standards. It's a form of self-sabotage that protects the ego.
And while Victoria is doing all this deep internal work, her sister Gracie's life is moving right along on her father's ideal script.
Right. Gracie marries Harry Wilkes, a rich guy from an established family. And Victoria observes that Gracie is being molded into their own images, following the path of their father's idol.
This is the ultimate symbol of the toxic family script being successfully executed. Image, wealth, status, they're prioritized above everything else.
And right in the middle of this celebration of image, Jim delivers the ultimate second-class citizenship warning to Victoria.
His blunt assessment of her prospects is just devastating. He says, don't expect something like this if you ever get married. If you find some guy to marry, you'd better elope. We couldn't do this again.
Notice that phrasing, we couldn't do this again. It's not about her happiness. It's about the financial and logistical inconvenience of celebrating her existence. He is preemptively dismissing any future partner she might find as being low status, unworthy of a grand wedding.
It's a desperate attempt to reinforce her status as the less loved, less worthy daughter.
But this insult, instead of crushing her completely, it acts as a sharp catalyst. Victoria has an epiphany. She's tired of not admitting she wants happiness because she thinks she doesn't deserve it.
And her new vows are so specific. She wants a life, a man, and I want to lose 25 pounds by next June for the wedding. Her goal is clearly defined. Avoid being seen as her fat spinster older sister.
So the physical and psychological transformation begins, starting with a really powerful symbolic act of control, the rhinoplasty.
Right. Inspired by her students talking about plastic surgery so nonchalantly, she decides to get the nose job over Christmas break, and she chooses to stay in New York and assert her agency rather than going home to that stressful family environment.
And the nose job isn't just about aesthetics. Its significance is purely psychological. She views the surgery as actively shedding the one feature her father mocked, Dad's grandma's nose. She is physically removing the feature her father used as a focal point for ridicule.
Her friends got it. Harlan and John understood it was a big deal to her psychologically.
It was Victoria asserting control over her physical form, saying, I choose what I look like, not the features my father made fun of. And this act of agency, not the result of the surgery itself, it provided a massive confidence boost.
But the external pressures, they come back in full force in the form of the bridesmaid dress nightmare.
Oof.
Gracie chooses a spectacular, strapless, heavy chocolate brown satin gown. It's designed for girls with Gracie's proportions, size 2s and 4s.
It's a terrible choice for Victoria's larger, broader, and fairer frame. The dark, structured, heavy satin will highlight everything she's desperately trying to conceal. She realizes the dress will be hideous on her. It'll make her bottom look like the broadside of a barn.
And whether it was intentional or just driven by Grace's own self-absorption, the effect is the same. Victoria feels her sister has inadvertently ensured she will look like a monster beside the other dainty bridesmaids.
And her immediate reaction is to revert to her old comfort mechanism.
Yeah.
She silently buys 3 pints of ice cream, feeling totally hopeless that all her efforts will be undermined by a wardrobe choice she can't control. The shame just comes flooding back. So Victoria's internal battle, this push and pull between the old shame script and her new self-acceptance, it's interrupted and ultimately balanced by the introduction of Colin White.
And she meets him so naturally at the gym after her surgery.
Their initial connection is built on a bit of a misinterpretation, right? Colin sees her recovering from the rhinoplasty and assumes it's from a car accident, a story Victoria just rolls with.
But the depth of their relationship comes from this incredibly rare psychological mirroring, from shared trauma.
Colin, this handsome litigator, he reveals his own parallel family script. He lived entirely in the shadow of his deceased older brother Blake, the perfect son, the Harvard-Yale golden boy, the athlete. Colin, who struggled to pass the bar, was deemed a poor second best by his perpetually mourning parents.
That's just phenomenal. Both Victoria, the tester cake, and Colin, the inferior replacement, carried the same exact core wound.
Exactly. That toxic message of being fundamentally inadequate because they failed to meet an impossible, externally imposed standard.
And their shared understanding, it immediately eliminates the need for any pretension. They can skip the superficial dating stuff because they already know each other's deepest fear.
And that shared vulnerability allows their relationship to just bypass all the surface concerns and become a watered garden where everything grew lavishly.
Colin cherishes Victoria. He appreciates her mind, her personality, and specifically her body. He tells her he loved every inch of her womanly body. He was the first man to genuinely look at her body without shame and make her feel like a goddess.
And this genuine, non-judgmental, unconditional love, it's the ultimate counterscript. It removes the desperation from Victoria's diet. The weight battle eases significantly.
She loses 18 pounds, but she's motivated by health and happiness now, not by that frantic need for external validation. She finally feels secure in his love, realizing, I was lovable after all.
But the ghost of the family script is tenacious. It shows up the moment Victoria introduces Colin to her parents.
Of course it does. Jim's comments are immediately hostile and belittling, targeting her usual pressure points. He comments on her weight, hoping she's watching it to fit into the dress.
And then comes the direct, cruel comparison in front of Colin. It's the true test. He says, Victoria is our smart one. Gracie's our beauty.
Jim just cannot resist framing Victoria in terms of her perceived lack, even when meeting her serious boyfriend.
He's asserting his dominance, trying to define Victoria for her partner. But this is where Colin steps up as Victoria's true ally. He doesn't react angrily, which would just escalate Jim's need for control. Instead, his nonverbal demeanor conveys this powerful, protective message.
He visibly supports her, pulling her close. His posture just communicates that he's her partner and her shield, and anyone who belittles her has to deal with him.
And the source notes that Jim got the message and backed off. For the first time in her life, Victoria is externally protected from her father's cruelty by a partner who understands the rules of the game.
As Gracie's wedding approaches, the narrative really focuses on this final, intense battle between image and reality, and it reveals who truly bought into the toxic Dawson script.
And sadly, it seems to be Gracie.
Yeah. 2 months before the wedding, Harry cheats on her. And Victoria, the emotional realist, urges Gracie to cancel the wedding. She says Harry will never stop and that this behavior is only the beginning.
Victoria, having done her own emotional work, she sees the truth. Harry is not a decent man.
But the parental response is horrifying, yet it's utterly predictable within that narcissistic structure. Jim tells Gracie that men do that sometimes. It doesn't mean anything.
That comment is not advice. It is the ultimate affirmation that image preservation, the prestigious Wilkes family alliance, the monumental affair, is infinitely more important than Gracie's happiness, her moral treatment, or her self-respect.
And Gracie, who was used to the party line from him and her future husband, chooses to stay with Harry. She confirms she has fully internalized that parental script that prioritizes appearance and financial security over self-worth.
It's a sad parallel.
Yeah.
Victoria fought the script. and Gracie embraced it.
And Victoria's own external struggle reaches its physical climax when she breaks her leg falling off a stage at school. It immobilizes her right before the wedding.
And this broken leg accident, it provides another moment of profound validation from Cullen, demonstrating the unconditional nature of his love. Victoria, terrified, calls him, expecting him to minimize the inconvenience.
But he doesn't. He rushes to the hospital telling her, "I know you think you're not worthy of it, you goof, but I love you and I'm coming up."
That refutation of her internalized script is the most powerful medicine she could possibly receive. He directly challenges the core belief that she is a burden or unworthy of commitment when she's imperfect or injured.
But the immobilization, it triggers her final, desperate weight panic. She gains back 7 pounds. She sits on the edge of the tub and just cries, realizing she's lost all the progress she made and she's going to look like a brown cow in that horrible dress. The decades of programming just resurface so violently.
And Cullen's response is the final, definitive therapeutic intervention. He immediately throws away her scale.
He says, "I don't want your whole life dictated by what you weigh. I love you the way you are, whatever size you happen to be."
That action physically removes the external arbiter of her worth, the scale, and insists that her value is intrinsic, not numerical. This is the culmination of the work she'd been doing in therapy, accepting love without condition and defining her worth internally.
And all of this leads to the ultimate moment of choice, the bouquet toss at the wedding. Victoria has lost 11 pounds, not the 25 she aimed for, and she's standing there among the single women.
And her mother glides past her, delivering the final, cruel, dismissive blow.
Christine tells her, "Let them have it, dear. They're all younger than you are. They'll all get married one day. You don't even know if you ever will."
It's the family delivering the ultimate verdict.
No.
You are undeserving. You are destined to be a spinster.
Victoria just collapses inwardly. Her mother's words had hit her too hard. She freezes, unable to lift her arm, confirming her mother's message that she is second class and unworthy of happiness.
It's the entire Jim and Christine parenting strategy condensed into one paralyzing sentence.
But then comes the moment of psychological breakthrough, the moment the new script finally overwrites the old.
Colin, seeing her agony from across the room, shouts the silent message that changed her life. He sees her internal struggle physically manifest as paralysis, and he shouts, "You're lovable."
And it's as though she had heard him, as though the internal script she had been fighting for decades had finally been replaced by a true voice of worth. Her face just breaks into a smile.
In a split second, she reaches out, determined, and she grabs the bouquet. She holds it aloft, and everyone cheered.
This isn't just catching flowers. This is the moment she chooses her fate, believing she deserves happiness and taking control of the dream her family told her she could never, ever have. #tagoutro.
What a powerful journey, from tester cake to self-acceptance.
It really is. And Victoria's final liberation, it wasn't achieved by the diet or the surgery alone. She was still heavier than her goal, and she was still standing in that hideous brown strapless dress. Her freedom came from shedding the psychological shackles of her parents' cruelty in that one critical moment.
Exactly. The bouquet was not caught because she met some external standard of thinness or beauty, but because she was finally ready to be loved, and she believed she deserved it. She took the unconditional validation that Colin offered, and she synthesized it with the internal work she had done in therapy. The true transformation was psychological. She rejected the script.
Her story demonstrates that you can pursue vocational fulfillment, you can cultivate a healthy relationship, and you can find self-acceptance, even if your narcissistic family continues their attempts to belittle you.
Colin provided the external evidence of her worth, for sure. But Victoria did the heavy lifting by choosing her career path, seeking therapy, and actively removing the emotional anchors, like the scale and the mock nose. They kept her tethered to their expectations.
Victoria's narrative shows us that these toxic family scripts, they're designed to keep us small and compliant with their need for control and image.
And her story proves that the only way out is through recognizing the script, finding allies who speak the truth, and then in a moment of radical choice, seizing the happiness you were told you were unworthy of.
So we leave you today with this thought, learner. When was the last time you truly checked whose script you were living by? Are you holding yourself back from happiness or career advancement or a healthy relationship because you believe an insult or a dismissive joke someone else handed you years ago? Victoria's story reminds us that we are all worthy of catching that bouquet, regardless of the role our family assigned us as the tester cake.